Well, I'm joined today by Nels Pederson, who I've had the pleasure of knowing these past 4 years. From building teams at tech unicorns to climbing some of the world's tallest mountains, Nels has continued to push himself to new heights, professionally and literally speaking. He would go so far as to say that stealing away to mountains for a few weeks is actually critically important to one's professional success. So I'm super excited to talk to him today about that. Nels, thank you so much for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, the first thing I want to dive into is actually related to time off. So, we live in a culture that's just all about the grind, almost idealizing the hustle, the 100-hour work week. And I wanted to know your impression of this because to do the type of hiking and the type of exploration that you do takes time, significant time. Do you think we as a society have an issue with taking time off? And do you think there's some sort of shame component around it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like if anyone answers that no, then I think that maybe there's some evaluating. I mean, the short answer is yes. I think that there is a beauty and an importance to time off to help you be a better professional that even like not only as individuals we should embrace, but companies themselves should embrace too. And as society, we just struggle to do that. I've worked a lot in tech startups. It's common to see tech startups offer, unlimited vacation, like that's a perk. And then I don't know the stats behind it, but it comes out that almost no one takes it, right? Like it's just, there's a culture built in how we operate that we think it's a shameful thing to take time off. Even though I think if you were to like put everybody in a dark little room and say like, hey, what do you actually think? Everyone agrees that it's like incredibly important. It not only helps you recharge, I think it helps you love a different part of your life that's not professional, but it also then helps you recharge to get excited about working again. So to answer your question, yes, I think we do have a problem with not embracing time off. I don't think people do it enough. You're starting to see a little bit of shift there. I think COVID kicked that into gear a little bit where people are realizing that they need to make a little bit more space for themselves to recharge. So I'm hoping that shift continues.
Oh, that's great. Well, I would agree with you. And I have heard the same stats that unlimited PTO actually means people take less of it as opposed to their standard 2 or 3 weeks. So, going to this idea of adventuring, tell me more about what it looks like. I would love to hear, having myself only climbed a few big mountains in my life and certainly not the world's tallest. I'd love to know, what does it actually mean? What does it look like? Is it also a pseudo sabbatical? Do you have to take extensive periods of time off to do this?
Yeah, so like it totally varies. In some cases it's going out on a Tuesday. Like I have a long day at work. I'm just gonna go out for a walk with my dog in on some trails. Or maybe I'm gonna go for a trail run and get lost and then now it's dark and I'm wandering around. This last weekend I was out for 48 hours sleeping on I mean it's February, like sleeping on a snowy mountain, waking up at 4 a.m. to start climbing a peak early on. Earlier in the year, like New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, I was at sleeping at 19,000 feet, going to go summit the tallest point in South America. Like that was a 2 week trip. So it can manifest in a bunch of different things. Sometimes really, really long expeditions, sometimes just day trips on a weekday, something longer on a weekend. And it, the longer to your question about do you need to take long sabbaticals to do these trips, I guess the short answer is no. Because I haven't. I've always just kind of found a way to slot it into my life. Like it depends on who you are, depends on the type of work that you do. But, I've always found that, you can do a lot with a couple of weeks. Or if you find yourself in a moment of transition, like taking advantage of that before you start something next. So if you're in between jobs, you have time off because you're laid off like I am right now. It's like go take advantage of it and have fun with it. It doesn't necessarily mean like I have to step away from my job and then try to pick things back up again.
Yeah. No, that's really great to hear. I think we don't often carve out even time after work because a lot of us feel that burnout. I can speak for myself and say that that's often the case. I'd love to know more about what can a mountain teach you that, let's say, a beach with a Mai Tai in hand maybe can't? Like, what is, because that's also another way a lot of people recharge, right? On their vacation, they take time to do this. But tell me, what can a mountain teach you that nothing, that you haven't found another way to be taught by?
You realize really quickly, especially the more in depth you get into climbing mountains, like nothing ever goes to plan. Like it is completely unpredictable. You are absolutely problem solving in the moment, and your safety can really depend on you being able to do that effectively. And it's so far different than what I'm used to in regular life. And I think the reality too is that it's like it's really easy when you think about professionally to get into a kind of complacent pattern. Like this is how we operate. It's working right now. And but then when you think about like when you've been most successful in life or when companies really succeed is when they're constantly trying to innovate, constantly trying to change, constantly trying to solve problems that might pop up in the future. And so like I'll give you an example. Like you can imagine if you're rock climbing in the middle of a route, this happens all the time. I'll be completely unsure what to do. And I am on a vertical wall. I don't know what I should grab. My arms are getting tired. Like I'm sitting there holding myself. If I fall, I'm going to fall a distance. I don't want to do that. I can't not do anything though. Like I've had that thought many a times, and it's like easy to get in your own psyche there. It's just like I have to move forward. There's no solution to go down. Like it's okay, Nels, you're gonna have to do something. So like let's try, let's test. And it's truly like testing and iterating. Like let's reach up on that ledge. Is there a good handhold there? Like, okay, not that one. Like at the end of the day, I can even be scary when you know what you have to do. Like I have to grab here and it's gonna be very committing, but I have to do it. Uh and you need to do it in order to move forward. So it's corny, but it's like this idea of I wasn't expecting to have to like solve that type of complex problem while I got out there, but um, that's ultimately what I have to do in order to be successful and move forward. So I've every single time I go climbing, I have one of those experiences where you're just like basically what I've learned now. Like you can see it behind me. It's just you have tools in your toolkit, and you learn how to use your tools really well, and you are kind of like a jack of all trades where you're ready for any situation that pops up. Um, and I found that it's silly to think, but like the more that has become an aspect of my personal life, the more it bleeds into my professional life. It's just I'm not afraid of weird scenarios popping up at work. I'm not afraid of ambiguous things that like need to be tackled in a job. It's just like you recognize, okay, things are sometimes out of your control, but we need to move forward. Like, how are we going to do that?
That's awesome. So, in addition to the surrender to some of the unpredictable, do you think it also helps you trust in yourself more? That you mentioned you've got these tools, but you have to trust that you know how to use them. You have to trust in your physical strength and your mental acuity to make the right call. Do you think that's also what bleeds over as much as it is the surrender to some of the chaos and unpredictability?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And like, without getting too dramatic, you like when if you're in some sort of hobby or sport where the situations you put yourself in are like safety related situations, um, and you really start to dial in like how to perform things safely, and like it also helps you understand like how to handle stressful situations, and also understand that like tying this now back to professionally, that the scenarios you are dealing with at work aren't life or death. Like they are situations that you're going to work through, and you're going to do a good job, and that is important. But ultimately, you can work through that stress. Like when you've done it in a different arena that involves your actual like true safety, um, I found it makes me a calmer person. Like I'm not stressed out in the same way that I had been in the past. Like I don't find myself rattled when things are unpredictable. I've been surprised how much that has like my calm demeanor that I can have by doing some of these outdoor activities in these stressful situations has bled into kind of me being very calm in the same side, like same normally stressful situations professionally as well.
That's awesome. So I could definitely use some more mountains in my life.
Yeah,
Well,
or whatever it is, like it's I think I can really relate to like physical activities. Like, it can be running, it can be anything, lifting. I know you love lifting. Like it's, when you really push yourself and and you understand that your limits are something that sometimes you just create for yourself. Uh, and you can really push past them, start to understand that can be applied to other aspects of life.
yeah, I think it's great to do hard things by choice. So when hard things that we didn't choose come up, we're more capable of dealing with them. And that's what it sounds like you've consistently practiced as a discipline in this hobby that's then, like you said, translated over. I'd love to know more because I'm such an amateur. I don't know. I don't even think hiker is really a great term for me because I rarely go hiking. I love the mountains here in New Hampshire, but I go once every few weeks. But I'm curious, what is the tallest mountain you've ever climbed? And I'd love to know more about what that experience is like. If I never get there, I want to know what it's like to be up that high.
So the peak I climbed on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, was called Aconcagua. So it's the tallest peak in all of the Americas, South and North America. It's just under 23,000 feet. And for all those European listeners, almost 7,000 meters. Uh, it's a beast. Like, because it's so high up, you have to work your way up slowly to get your body used to like the smaller levels of oxygen, right? You can't just show up on the top of the mountain, otherwise you will like pass out, right? Your body has to slowly adjust and acclimatize in order to be able to handle like the lower levels of oxygen. So it's no matter what shape you're in, no matter like how excited you are to go quickly, you just have to take time to do it. So, it's weeks, months. Like if people go climb Everest, they're committing a month, sometimes two. And it's not because it takes that long to like rush your way from the bottom to the top. You're just working really, really slowly. So, Aconcagua, we were on the mountain for 14 days. So it's me and a close friend. We didn't have a guide. So we were working with like a logistics company to help us get our permits, to help us get to the mountain. It's in the middle of nowhere. And then they also had a service where they brought some of our food on a mule up to one of the base camps. So we weren't carrying all of our weight, but our packs were 50, 60 pounds. I mean, it's a big thing on our back. And then you slowly just work your way up. And we started at, I don't know, whatever it was, 7,000, 8,000 feet. You go up and that first camp is at 10,000 feet. And then you spend 2 nights there. And it's really common to sleep at a lower camp, spend a day hiking up, get your body used to being a little bit higher up, and then go back and sleep. So you're kind of almost climbing the mountain twice. You go up, spend a day there, you come back down. And you go up and then you stay there. And then you do the same thing. You go up again, you come back down. So once you start to get to the higher camps, at Aconcagua, it just like it becomes really miserable. So when we were there, the weather was really, really tough. It is crazy cold. I mean, we're talking like, 30, 40 mile an hour winds, negative 20 degrees at some of these camps. And life just becomes a little bit more miserable. And you don't it in a weird way, like it's never going to be great. And that's part of the fun. Like if you like this as a hobby, you have a lot of fun in the suffering. And it's a strange thing, but you love the struggle and the challenge of everyday living at incrementally more difficult elevations or like difficult camps. And so I think we had 5 different camps on our way up the mountain. Um, I laugh at this because me and my buddy were at one point we're at 19,000 feet. Like once you get higher up, it is if you've ever climbed on like say in Colorado or somewhere where elevation is just high, like anything above 5,000 feet, your body starts to feel. And it's like more difficult to walk, it's more difficult to run. It gets amplified a ton. Like once you start getting over 10,000 feet and 19,000 feet, you're just like struggling to exist. I mean, you're moving so slow. Anything you do is just a task. And at this point, like we're just carrying everything and living on our own. And we're kind of, we're planning and charting out our own path up this mountain. Weather changes all the time. So, like, I'm on a satellite phone with my wife. She's giving us almost hourly updates on, like, hey, we had a weather window in mind. We ended up having to push it back a couple days because, like, it was really dangerous weather. And the other, like, then you do little things like, oh, I need water. Like, we would spend 3 to 4 hours a day melting snow in order to drink. Like that became our life. Was we were just laying in our tent in our sleeping bags for 3 to 4 hours a day, and it was just the simplest little things to survival turn into your like most important crucial moments, and it is just so cool. Like it's so tying it back to work. It's life is so simple when you're on a mountain. Like I can't think about emails. I can't think about that deal I lost to a competitor because I am just trying to get water for the day, and I'm going to spend a sixth of the day doing that. I've done probably 5 or 6 week long plus expeditions, and it's such a beautiful way to recharge. Like if you're burnt out at work, you need to step away for a little bit and kind of like almost focus on the more the more primitive like just survival things. Mountains I've found are just a really cool way to do that.
Does it make you so, in addition to having to worry about your survival like that, and, to your point, it's so slow, like time kind of slows down. What is it like to look out on the top of this peak? Does it make you feel also really insignificant as much as you're trying to survive and your focus is like you are the most significant thing in that moment, keeping yourself alive? Is there also this kind of unique balance of I also am so small in this world? Like, is there that feeling as well?
Yeah, absolutely. To that idea, like I think I feel about it more in this idea of like I just have so little control of what's going on. Take weather, for example. Mountains are particularly rough when it comes to weather. It's not predictable. It can be really extreme. It can be great, and more often than not, it's really extreme. And we're so used to like I'm so used to living a life where everything's predictable, right? And I can regiment everything in my life. And it is you feel like I feel like such a pawn in a much bigger game when I've had, on different trips, I've had camps where I've been stuck at for 10 days because we can't move because of weather. And it's like it is, dangerous to move. And, for safety reasons, we're literally going to stay in the same spot for 10 days. That's nuts. And like if there's no better way to think about your life is like I always am reminded, I guess, of like the control I have when it comes to these trips. And especially and it's also when you get to the top too. Like in on Aconcagua, on any peak in Washington, you look out and you see thousands of mountains. And it's just like this beautiful reminder that I just poured my soul, heart, and life for the last 2 weeks into climbing this thing. And there's maybe 1,000 other peaks that would be just as like there's so much out there to do. And it helps put things into perspective. And it I think that's also like to this idea of, it recharges you when you come back to your professional life. It like makes you that much calmer of a person when you realize like the world is really big. I i fucking love selling software, but at the end of the day I'm selling software. And like and every time I'm on top of a mountain, I get thankful for like all the little things in life that I'm normally not corny about, like work, like my family, like you get reminded of like, whoa, there's so much more to this world than just this peak. And I'm excited to go explore it.
Is there a reacclimation process to coming back to the mainland, to the real world? I mean, You talk about, acclimating as you climb the mountain. What about when you come back and you have to face the emails, the calendar being full, the lost deals? Do you have to reacclimate too?
Yeah, you do. Just like any vacation, there's a vacation hangover that you have to deal with. And I've combated that a little bit over time by just like making space a couple days into like when you're diving back into work, or even life. You literally might be burnt out still because physically you're tired. You might have jet lag, whatever it is. But it's just like even if that, even if you were to climb a mountain next door and then come back, like it's just still a struggle to like switch your mindset. So there is totally that like reacclimatization process of going back to life, and I found a good way to combat that is just like make space, give yourself a couple days to adjust back into it, and also give yourself some time to process. Like I think one of the coolest things is when you go on these big trips or small trips, reflecting on like what did I learn this time, and what do I want to take away from this trip, and then it's easy to like jump from one to the next without really like pulling away some takeaways, and but having some space to write that down, think about it, and then like actually try to apply it to life is always good.
Have you had to learn to fall in love with boredom? Like when you're
Oh,
on a mountain and you have to just wait, like is there
oh, fuck yeah, yeah. It's the. I mean, because it's not always just waiting. Like, think when you think about this hobby, you have an amazing amount of time constantly. Like, y- mountain climbing is very rarely. It's not a sprint. It like is absolutely 100% a marathon, if not like even more extreme in the sense that like you're moving slowly a lot of the time. And so on trips like Aconcagua, or I've climbed similar things up in Alaska, over in Nepal, you you have it could be 10 hours plus a day of hiking that is pretty. There's not a ton of safety involved. It's just non-consequential. We're on a trail, we're just going somewhere. Like after a while, you're not talking to your climbing partners anymore. You're just literally in your own head. I mean, I am like dastardly good at having conversations in my head for 10 plus hours at a time. And it's a muscle that you have to build up because it can drive some people insane. I don't have a ton of creative outlets. And I was laughing with my wife that like I actually find that running and hiking are my creative outlet because it's one of the few times where I like have really uninterrupted time to just think. And so I have like little tricks I do to kill time in my mind, and I'm shockingly good at spending long periods of time doing nothing because I can just kind of be off in my own world.
I think that's great. Well, it's like I imagine it's the closest thing to a flow state. You get in that kind of rhythmic movement. It gets your, I don't know, your body kind of sets in this cadence where your mind can then, to your point, roam free. I'd love to know what those 10-hour conversations with yourself are like. I talk to myself for a few minutes every day, and sometimes even that's too much. But
I'll answer your question. Like I give myself a prompt, something like, what would your dream house be like? And I'll spend 8 hours thinking about that. Or like, what's your dream birthday party look like? It's something that like allows you to iterate a bunch in your mind. And I'll think about weird things like cabinet doors, like shit like that. It allows you to kind of like roam around in this world, and I've always found it's really fun. And then like at the end of the hike, we'll go and compare like what are the little things, what are you doing with your pool that I'm doing differently with mine.
that's awesome. Have you manifested any of the things that you spent all those hours building in your mind?
I don't have a pool. That's yeah,
Not
I do
yet.
have cabinet doors in my kitchen. Yeah, I've actually, so like prior to getting married, I went on a trip to Nepal. And I don't even think we were engaged yet, but I knew I wanted to marry my now wife. I spent 10 plus hours thinking about what our wedding would be like. And like it ended up being the wedding we had was kind of this fun, big day party celebration with different activities. And I was, at that, I was manifesting it, or building in my mind and then manifesting in real life. Um, It was a little bit different than what I initially planned, but like a lot of the elements were the same. So it sometimes does become reality.
That's really cool. Well, a couple more questions here for you. Who
Yeah.
is a hero of yours? I mean, I've read Into Thin Air, I've read Touching the Void. That's about as close as I've ever come, second to talking with you today, to this type of, endeavor. Are there heroes of yours who do what you do that you idolize, either who you've read or who you've watched in documentaries or who you've maybe even met?
Yeah, isn't it funny how most of the popular mountaineering books are all crazy disasters?
They're horrible. They're so awful. That's why I don't want to do it.
um, it's an interesting question. Like I have a ton of professional heroes. And heroes or mentors, whatever you want to call it, like a lot of people that have really helped guide me professionally. Hero for a lot of reasons to me is my dad. I mean, he was the person that got me into being outdoorsy. Like, and it started really small. But I wasn't really hiking until it was my freshman year of college, and he brought me out to Colorado. And a passion of his was there are a certain amount of mountains in Colorado's that are over 14,000 feet. They call them the 14ers. There's like 50 plus of them. And it was kind of his goal to climb as many as he could. And he wanted his son to come do it with me. And I was like such a little shit where the patience of like focusing and being, I was an active kid, but going out and doing that was a struggle. And I think I got my ass kicked the first couple we did. And I eventually got hooked on it. And that led to, him and I went to climb Kilimanjaro. We went and spent 3 weeks in Nepal climbing around Everest, and going up to that base camp. It it was cool. I mean, my dad was a professional, like he ran his own business, and he also made time to be an active person, like was really excited to get his kids into it. He's older now, so we have scaled back the types of trips that we do, but we still have opportunities to, we were out hiking and we did another 14er last year, like when we all got together as a family. So I don't know, he was the original person that got me thinking like I want to be that old dude that's still really active, that like has been successful, but also like just actually cares about being outdoors and cares about nature. And so I'll say that there was plenty of great climbers out there that I idolize. Plenty of very great climbers that have incredibly unhealthy lives. As far as you've read about some of them, but like the world's best rock climbers or mountain climbers don't always live the most healthy lives when it comes to like social relationships and success on other aspects of their life. And I'm never trying to be that. I'm nowhere near that good, like nowhere near as rad as those people, and I'm never going to be that way. But yeah, my dad's been a big hero in my life for that.
That's awesome. Well, I hope he watches this so he gets to hear that huge compliment because that's pretty badass. My last question for you today, in light of this new year, what new adventures await for you in 2024?
Big things take time, right? And there's like incremental wins along the way, right? I've learned that if I want to go climb a big mountain, it's the training days in between that'll help define whether I'll be successful or not. And the same is true professionally. So I have a list of anywhere between like 5 to 10 kind of dream mountains in Washington. And honestly, you would know most listeners of this would never have heard of them because they're very specific. They're like totally off and remote, but they're so challenging to get to. They're like very few people ever have climbed them. So you like the information that you have to get up top is oftentimes pretty sparse. And they're mostly weekend trips. Like, can you cover 50 miles in a weekend? And like, I am really stoked to push myself and do so in a safe way, to figure out like what can I do in a long weekend? Like what is possible. So that's the big 2024 focus, uh, for the mountainside. Like I got plenty of personal things that my wife and I are excited about, but on the mountainside, it's like 5 to 10 really big weekend climbing trips here locally in Washington.
That's awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing more about this. To your point, the books I've read make it almost impossible to imagine doing these because they have such tragic and terrifying realities, which I know are a part of it. You said as much the last time we talked too. There's real risk, and you mentioned it today as well. It's life is fragile, and there's unpredictable weather and unpredictable circumstances. So I really appreciate, though, how you shared this with me today and everyone else who's listening, because I do think that we have an option in this world to take more time to push ourselves to new heights. So thank you for inspiring me to do so.
Yeah. 100% mountains to me is somebody else's hobby to them. Like, I don't think it doesn't have to be a dangerous hobby. It's just like whatever you want to pour your passion and energy into. I just truly firmly believe that it will make you a better professional. It'll make you better in life. Like it'll just, the more you care about something, the more you dedicate your time and energy into it, it'll raise that tide for all aspects of your life.
You've inspired me to take seriously the challenges outside of work so that I can be, like I said before, I think better balanced, recalibrated. I think, it's easy to take seriously our first world problems and some of these things that are important, but it can be imbalanced. So I think having something outside of work to challenge and reinforce the things that we love and light our soul on fire, because I also think that it's easy to lose heart when things get tough for so long or they're the same. So it sounds like there's an opportunity to really shake things up.
Lauren, is this your way of saying you're committing to running a marathon this year?
No.
What's it gonna
I
take? What's it gonna take to get you to sign up right now for something?
I can't even convince my ass to sign up for a 4 miler. I've done a half a dozen 5Ks, and I don't train in between. I have a 4 miler that's coming up this month that I've thought about, because that would be 1 mile more than I've run.
Do it. I joke a little bit, but like it's actually now something that I'm like a believer of is if you ever have that buddy or whoever that like is a really good we've talked about this, you're a sucker for peer pressure. Like there's
Absolutely.
good peer pressure, bad peer pressure. The good peer pressure is like that friend that keeps hitting you up and is like, hey, you gotta run this thing with me. I'm a believer that you always have to say yes, like assuming it works in your life logistically, that when you have that brief moment of energy and passion for it, even if you know in your back of your mind like that's not smart, just go do it and you'll figure it out. So that 4 miler, Lauren, get on it and you're gonna crush it. And then drag Peter in with you and force him to do it too. It's a family bonding activity.
Okay. All right. I'll take seriously this push. As you said, I am a sucker for peer pressure, and I will probably be thinking about this until I sign up for it. So thank you again. I really appreciate you talking with me today and now giving me something I have to go sign up for after this. But seriously, I really appreciate you talking to me today on Cupalo Conversations and sharing with people who have never done this, have always been curious, maybe a little scared shitless like myself. And I think you're incredibly brave and badass. And I'm really excited for you for 2024 and those long weekend hikes, as well as those really important personal goals you have.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is fun.